Chapter 7. After Matthew buried Marcus at dawn in the garden behind the manor, where ancient oaks stood sentinel over graves that stretched back centuries, Ilara stood with the household staff as Moira spoke the old words, part prayer, part eulogy, part promise that his sacrifice would be remembered. Seelan did not attend. She could feel him through the bond. Locked in his chambers, wrestling with demons, she could only partially comprehend. His grief was a living thing, sharp-edged and bitter. Beneath it ran currents of shame and self-loathing so deep they made her chest ache. He blamed himself. For Marcus. For Isolde. For every soul he'd failed to save across 1,000 years. After the burial, Ilara retreated to the library. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't shake the image of Marcus falling, of Corvin's cruel smile, of Seelan's eyes going completely black as the monster rose. She needed to understand what she'd gotten herself into. Truly understand. The library held answers. Moira had told her that Seelan kept records of everything, house histories, treaties, the laws that governed the Night Court. If she was going to survive this war, she needed knowledge. She found the histories on the third shelf, leather-bound volumes thick with dust. The Chronicle of House Nightborn, Volume I. She pulled it down and began to read. The language was archaic, flowery, but the story it told was clear enough. House Nightborn was ancient, older than any other vampire house in the region, tracing its lineage back to the first vampires who'd walked the earth. They'd been warriors once, conquerors, ruling over humans with absolute power, but something had changed 3,000 years ago. A lord named Seelan, the elder Seelan's ancestor, had fallen in love with a human woman. When she died of old age, while he remained unchanged, his grief had transformed him. He'd declared that House Nightborn would no longer treat humans as cattle, but as beings worthy of protection. The other houses had called it weakness. Some had broken away, forming their own bloodlines built on the old ways. House Corvin was one of them, proud, brutal, viewing humans as nothing more than food and sport. The conflict between Nightborn and Corvin had simmered for millennia, erupting into open warfare periodically whenever one side gained too much power. The current war had started 3 years ago, when Corvin's forces had slaughtered an entire human village under Nightborn protection. Claiming the humans had violated the treaty by harboring a rogue vampire, Seelan had retaliated by destroying 2 of Corvin's blood farms, places where humans were kept in captivity, bred and harvested like livestock. The cycle of violence had escalated from there. You won't find answers in those books, Ilara startled. Seelan stood in the doorway, looking haggard. His hair was disheveled, his clothes, the same ones he'd worn during the attack, still stained with blood. But his eyes were silver again. The monster pushed back into its cage. I needed to understand, she said quietly, what we're fighting, why it matters. He moved into the library, his steps careful, as if approaching a skittish animal. It matters because House Corvin represents everything I've spent centuries trying to change. They see humans as objects, as food. His voice was raw. If they win this war, the Eastern Territories will become feeding grounds. Thousands will die, or worse, be turned into bloodhounds, twisted into weapons. Then we don't let them win. His laugh was bitter. Ilara, after last night, after you saw what I become when I lose control, you should be demanding I release you from the contract. You should be fleeing as far from me as possible. She set the book aside and stood, crossing to where he stood rigid by the fireplace. What I saw last night was a man pushed past his breaking point, trying desperately to protect the people he cares about. I'm not a man. I'm a monster who learned to pretend. No, she touched his arm, felt him flinch, but not pull away. A monster wouldn't have spent 500 years mourning his wife, wouldn't have locked away rooms because he couldn't bear to destroy her memory, wouldn't have negotiated a fair contract with a desperate woman when he could have simply taken what he wanted. You don't know what I've done. The things I did after Isolde died, I know you've spent centuries atoning for them. I know you hold yourself to an impossible standard because you're terrified of becoming that person again. She stepped closer. I know you're so busy protecting everyone else that you never let anyone protect you. His jaw clenched. Marcus died because I wasn't fast enough. Marcus died because he chose to. Because he loved you enough to give his life for something you valued. Her voice softened. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless by drowning in guilt. For a long moment, Seelan simply stared at her. Then slowly, he raised his hand and cupped her cheek, his touch cool, gentle, reverent. How are you so brave? So forgiving? I'm not brave. I'm terrified. She leaned into his palm. But I'm tired of being broken. Tired of letting other people's cruelty define me. If I'm going to be bound to you, if I'm going to be caught in this war, then I want to fight. Not as something you protect, but as your partner. You're human, Elara. You can't. I killed a bloodhound last night. I've been training with Marcus for days. I'm not helpless. She met his silver eyes. And through the bond, I can feel what you're feeling. That makes me useful in ways a normal blood servant wouldn't be. I can be your warning system, your anchor when the control slips. Let me help you. Conflict warred across his features. Then quietly, it would put you in more danger. I'm already in danger. Corvin knows about me now. He'll come for me whether I'm useful or not. She grabbed his other hand, lacing their fingers together. At least if I'm trained, armed, fighting at your side, I have a chance. You could die. Everyone dies eventually. Even immortals can be killed. She squeezed his hands. But I'd rather die fighting than die cowering. And I'd rather face it with someone who sees me as strong than someone who sees me as something to be protected. Something shifted in his expression. Pride, perhaps, or the beginning of hope. You're remarkable. You know that? I'm angry, she corrected. Angry at Corvin for killing Marcus. Angry at the world that makes people like him possible. Angry that humans are seen as lesser by creatures who were human once themselves. Her voice hardened. And I want to make him pay. Seelan's smile was fierce and approving. Now you sound like a Nightborn. Over the next 3 days, the manor transformed into a war camp. Moira coordinated with the household staff to reinforce the ward's complex magical barriers that required vampire blood and ancient rituals to maintain. Clara and the other humans practiced evacuation drills, memorizing routes to the underground tunnels that honeycombed beneath the estate, and Seelan trained Alar himself, not just in weapons. Though they worked on that too, he was far more demanding than Marcus, pushing her until her muscles screamed and sweat soaked through her clothes. But he also taught her about vampire weaknesses, about the politics of the Night Court, about the ancient laws that even creatures, like Corvin, had to respect. The Treaty of Night forbids one house from entering another's stronghold without invitation, he explained one evening. As they sparred in the courtyard, his sword met hers with a clang that numbed her arm. Corvin violated that treaty when he attacked. It means other houses might be willing to ally with us now. They'll see him as a threat to their own security. So we need allies. Alara blocked his next strike, barely, and riposted. He deflected it effortlessly. We need proof that Corvin is breaking other treaties too. The blood farms, for instance, officially, they're forbidden. But houses like Corvin run them in secret, bribing the court to look away. He disarmed her with a twist of his wrist, her sword clattering to the stones. Again, and this time, don't telegraph your strikes. They trained until midnight, until Alara could barely lift her arms. But she felt stronger each day, more confident. And through the bond, she felt Seelan's pride in her progress, his gratitude for the distraction from his grief on the 4th night after the attack. As Alara soaked in a hot bath, trying to ease her aching muscles, Moira knocked on her door with urgent news. We've received a summons from the Night Court, the vampire said, her expression grave. Both Lord Seelan and his blood bonded are to appear before the Council of 7 in 3 days' time. They want to hear testimony about Corvin's attack. That's good, isn't it? We can prove he violated the treaty, or Corvin will prove that Lord Seelan lost control and became the monster he used to be. Moira's eyes were worried. The council has been looking for an excuse to strip House Nightborn of its territories for years. They see my lord's protection of humans as weakness, as a threat to vampire supremacy. If they rule against him, what happens? House Corvin absorbs our territories. Our household is disbanded. The humans under our protection. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Alar's blood ran cold. And Seelan, at best exile, at worst, Moira's voice dropped. The council has the power to order execution. True death, even for a vampire lord. Through the bond, Alara felt Seelan's awareness of the summons, felt his calculated assessment of the risks. He wasn't afraid, or rather, he'd lived so long that fear had become just another factor to consider, but she was afraid, terrified that she'd lose him just as she was beginning to understand what he meant to her. What do we do? She asked. Moira's smile was sharp. We prepare. The Night Court respects strength and cunning above all else. We need to prove that Lord Seelan is both and that you are not a liability, but an asset. How? By teaching you how to survive vampire politics. which is far more dangerous than anything you've faced so far. Moira's eyes glinted. You wanted to fight at his side? Welcome to the real battlefield, child. Here, the weapons are words, and a single mistake can destroy everything. Chapter 8. The Night Court of Seven convened in a fortress carved from black granite, perched on a mountain peak where no sunlight reached even at noon. Elara's first glimpse of it stole her breath, all towering spires and impossible architecture. Defying gravity with bridges that spanned empty air and towers that twisted like frozen smoke, it was built by the first vampires, Seelan explained, as their carriage climbed the winding mountain road. Before humans had language, before your civilizations existed, the stone itself is infused with vampire blood, which is why it stands after 10,000 years. He sat across from her, dressed in formal attire, a coat of deepest black embroidered with silver thread in patterns that suggested his house's ancient lineage. His hair was pulled back, severe and elegant, his silver eyes carefully neutral. But through the bond, she felt his tension, coiled tight as a spring. Moira had spent 3 days drilling Elara in court protocol. How to address the seven, where to stand, how to bow, when to speak, and when silence was required. The elaborate dance of vampire politics, where every word carried weight and every gesture meant something. Remember, Seelan said, as the fortress gates opened before them. You are my blood bonded, which gives you status above common servants, but below vampire nobility. The seven will try to intimidate you, to make you doubt yourself. Don't let them. What if I make a mistake? Then I'll handle it. His voice was firm. Your only job tonight is to tell the truth about Corvin's attack. Let me worry about the politics. But worry creased his brow. And through the bond she felt what he wouldn't say aloud, that bringing her here put her in danger. That the seven might see her as weakness to exploit. That Corvin would use every trick to paint her as a liability. The great hall was a cathedral of shadows and candlelight. Hundreds of vampires filled the space, their pale faces turned toward the raised dais where the seven sat in judgment. Each member of the council represented one of the ancient bloodlines, some older even than House Nightborn. Creatures who remembered the world before humans had built cities. Lord Corvin stood before the dais, his severed arm regrown but still marked by silver scars. When his blood-red eyes found Elara, his smile was pure malice. Lord Nightborn, the central figure on the dais, spoke a woman who appeared no older than 30 but whose eyes held Ian's. You stand accused of violating the Treaty of Night by attacking a fellow lord without provocation. How do you answer? With respect, High Counselor Severin, I defend my actions. Seelan's voice carried through the hall, clear and unwavering. Lord Corvin violated the treaty first by attacking my stronghold, killing my master at arms, and attempting to abduct my blood-bonded. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Corvin's expression never changed. A convenient claim, Severin said, given that the master at arms is dead and cannot testify. Do you have other witnesses? I do. My blood-bonded, Elara Thorne, was present during the attack. All eyes turned to Elara. The weight of their attention was suffocating, hundreds of predators assessing prey, measuring her worth, her weakness. She kept her spine straight, remembering Moira's training. Approach the dais, Miss Thorne, Severin commanded. Elara walked forward, each step measured. She could feel Seelan's presence behind her, a steady anchor. When she reached the proper distance, she bowed as Moira had taught her, not to deep, showing respect without submission. You are human, Severin observed, as if this were somehow surprising. I am, High Counselor. And you claim Lord Corvin attacked House Nightborn's stronghold? I don't claim it, High Counselor. I witnessed it. Elara kept her voice steady. Lord Corvin brought bloodhounds and a blood mage. He breached Lord Nightborn's defenses, killed Marcus, the master at arms, and attempted to abduct me. Why would he want you? Another council member spoke, a man with eyes like chips of ice. You're just a blood servant, hardly worth violating treaty, because she's blood bonded to me, Seelan said, his voice sharp. Which makes her an extension of House Nightborn. An attack on her is an attack on my house. Blood bonded? Severin leaned forward, interest flickering in her ancient eyes. How rare, and how convenient for your argument, Lord Nightborn. A bond that cannot be verified, claimed to justify violence against a rival house. The bond can be verified, Seelan said coldly. Test us. Oh, I will. Severin rose from her seat, descending the dais with liquid grace. She approached Elara, studying her with the intensity of a scholar examining a curiosity. Tell me, child, what does Lord Nightborn feel right now? Elara closed her eyes, reaching through the bond. Anger, controlled but burning, concern for my safety, and she paused, feeling deeper. Fear, not for himself, but for what will happen if the council rules against him. Severin's eyebrows rose. Interesting. And what else? Grief, old grief, like a wound that never healed. And guilt he blames himself for things that weren't his fault. Alar opened her eyes. He's also irritated that you're questioning his honor, but he's too disciplined to show it. A ghost of a smile touched Severin's lips. The bond is genuine. She returned to her seat, which makes Lord Corvin's attack even more provocative. He knew what she was to you, Lord Nightborn. He knew taking her would be an act of war. I knew nothing of the sort, Corvin interjected smoothly. I came to House Nightborn to discuss territory disputes. Lord Nightborn attacked me without warning, lost control of his bloodlust, and nearly killed me. The bloodhounds were my personal guard. I brought them for protection, not assault. Lies. The word escaped Alara before she could stop it. The hall went silent. Severin's gaze fixed on her, sharp as a blade. You dare interrupt? Alara's heart hammered, but she forced herself to stand tall. I dare tell the truth, High Counselor. Lord Corvin brought dozens of bloodhounds. He killed Marcus in cold blood, simply to provoke Lord Nightborn. He told me himself that he wanted to see how much control Lord Nightborn had when something he valued was threatened. She lies to protect her master, Corvin said dismissively. As any servant would. I'm not lying. Alar's voice hardened. And I'm not just a servant. I'm blood bonded to Lord Nightborn, which means I feel what he feels. I know his control, his restraint. He only lost it when you murdered an innocent man and threatened to take me. Any lord would have responded the same. Any weak lord, Corvin sneered. A true vampire wouldn't have human pets, wouldn't pretend we're anything but predators. Lord Nightborn's softness endangers us all. He makes vampires appear weak, controllable, when we should be feared and obeyed. Is that why you run blood farms in violation of treaty? Seelan's voice cut through the hall like ice. Because you're so strong. Or is it because you're nothing but a glorified butcher, hiding behind the old ways? Because you lack the courage to evolve? Gasps echoed through the hall. Corvin's face twisted with rage. You accuse me, I accuse you of breaking treaty law by maintaining blood farms, of creating bloodhounds from unwilling humans, of attacking my stronghold and attempting to abduct my blood-bonded. Seelan's silver eyes were merciless. And I have proof. He pulled a leather case from his coat, extracted documents, and handed them to Severin. Records seized from a blood farm I destroyed 2 months ago. They show House Corvin's seal on supply orders, payment receipts, breeding schedules for humans kept in captivity. Severin studied the documents, her expression unreadable. The other council members leaned in, reading over her shoulder. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Severin spoke. These records appear genuine, her gaze fixed on Corvin. Do you deny running blood farms, Lord Corvin? I deny nothing. Corvin's voice was defiant. Our kind has fed on humans since the dawn of time. Farming them efficiently is simply evolution of our feeding practices. It is a violation of the Treaty of Night, which forbids the keeping of humans in captivity for blood harvest. Severin's voice was ice. A treaty you swore to uphold when you became a lord, a treaty written by weak-minded fools who forgot what we are. Corvin's composure finally cracked. We are apex predators. We should rule humans, not coddle them. House Nightborn's soft policies make a mockery of our kind. House Nightborn's policies, Severin interrupted, have maintained peace with the human kingdoms for 500 years, have prevented the kind of vampire hunts that decimated our numbers in ages past, have proven that sustainable feeding from willing donors is more reliable than harvesting captives who die from fear and malnutrition. She stood, her presence commanding absolute attention. Lord Corvin, the council finds you guilty of violating the Treaty of Night on multiple counts. Your attack on House Nightborn was unprovoked and illegal. Your blood farms are hereby ordered disbanded. You will pay reparations to Lord Nightborn for the death of his master-at-arms and damages to his stronghold. Corvin's face went white with fury. You cannot. We can, and we have. Severin's smile was cold. Be grateful we don't order your execution. Consider this your only warning, Lord Corvin. The old ways are dying. Adapt, or be swept aside. She turned to Seelan. House Nightborn is cleared of all charges. Your territories remain intact. Your actions are deemed justified. Self-defense. Her gaze softened fractionally. And Lord Nightborn, your restraint in not killing Lord Corvin when you clearly had the power to do so shows the control this council values. You honor your house's reputation. Relief flooded through Alara, so intense her knees nearly buckled. Through the bond, she felt Seelan's own relief, carefully masked but profound. But as they turned to leave the hall, Corvin's voice followed them, low, venomous, audible only to their vampire-sharp hearing. This isn't over, Nightborn. I will destroy everything you love. Your human pet will scream my name before the end. Seelan's hand found Alara's, squeezing gently. Through the bond, she felt his response, not fear, but grim determination. Let him try. Chapter 9. Between darkness and dawn's journey back to Nightborn Manor took 3 days, and Alara spent much of it watching Seelan. He sat across from her in the carriage, silent and contemplative, his silver eyes fixed on the passing landscape, though she suspected he saw none of it. Through the bond, she felt the complexity of his emotions, relief at the council's verdict tangled with dread at what would come next. Corvin's threat hung between them like a blade. You're thinking too much, she said finally. Unable to bear the silence any longer, his gaze shifted to her, focusing. I'm calculating. There's a difference. You're tormenting yourself with worst-case scenarios. She leaned forward. I can feel it through the bond. Every horrible outcome, every way this could go wrong. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That obvious? To me? Yes. She reached across the space between them, taking his hand. His skin was cool as always, but his fingers curled around hers with surprising warmth. We won, Seelan. The council ruled in our favor. Corvin was publicly humiliated, which makes him more dangerous, not less. His jaw tightened. A vampire lord stripped of pride and territory becomes desperate. Desperate creatures do terrible things, then we'll be ready. You say that as if readiness is enough. His voice was rough. Alara, you don't understand what he's capable of. The things I've seen him do over centuries, then tell me. She squeezed his hand. Stop protecting me from the truth. I can't prepare for something I don't understand. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then he began to speak, his voice low and terrible. Corvin is 300 years younger than I am, but he's cunning in ways I never mastered. He doesn't fight with honor or follow rules unless it serves him. 200 years ago, he wanted access to the northern blood trade routes. House Ashford controlled them, a small house, peaceful, no military strength. So Corvin didn't attack them. He infiltrated their household, seduced the Lord's daughter, turned her without permission, then used her to poison her entire family from within. By the time House Ashford realized what was happening, they were already dying. Corvin walked in and claimed their territories without shedding a drop of his own blood. Alara's stomach turned. That's Corvin. He's patient, sadistic, and utterly without conscience. Seelan's eyes were distant, remembering. He once kept a human woman captive for 50 years, feeding from her, but keeping her alive, just to torment a rival lord who'd loved her. When she finally died, Corvin sent her bones back in a box with a note thanking him for the entertainment. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? Because he's careful. He operates within the letter of the law while violating its spirit. The blood farms were the first concrete proof of treaty violation I've been able to gather in 3 centuries. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, absent-minded, soothing. And now that the council has ruled against him, he has nothing left to lose. That makes him infinitely more dangerous. So what do? We fortify the manor. We call in every ally I have. We prepare for siege. His silver eyes met hers. And we accept that Corvin won't stop until one of us is dead. The words hung heavy in the air. Through the bond, Alara felt his resignation, the weight of centuries of conflict settling on his shoulders. But beneath it, something else, a fierce protectiveness directed entirely at her. There's another option, she said quietly. If you're about to suggest I release you from the contract and send you away. The answer is no, that's not what I was going to say. She took a breath. But you've thought about it. His silence was answer enough. Seelan, she waited until he met her eyes. I'm not leaving. I told you I want to fight at your side, not hide while you face this alone. You could die. Everyone dies eventually. She moved across the carriage to sit beside him, close enough that she could feel the supernatural cold radiating from his skin. But if I run now, if I let fear make me a coward, then I'm no better than Thomas who discarded me, or my father who sold me. I refuse to be that person anymore. His hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the strength she knew he possessed. "You're the bravest person I've known in 1,000 years. I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm more afraid of losing this," she gestured between them, "whatever this is becoming. I'm more afraid of going back to being alone, unwanted, broken." "You were never broken." His voice was fierce. "They were too blind to see what you were. Maybe." She leaned into his palm. "But you saw it. From the first moment. You looked at me and saw strength." "I saw myself," he said quietly. "Someone who'd been discarded, judged, found wanting by people who couldn't comprehend what they were looking at." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I saw someone who'd survived being broken and come out harder, sharper. Someone who refused to let cruelty defeat her." The carriage had stopped, she realized. They'd arrived back at the manor while they were speaking. But neither of them moved. "What happens now?" Elara asked. "Now we prepare for war." But his hand remained on her face, his silver eyes searching hers. "And I teach you everything I know about survival, about fighting, about being strong enough to face what's coming. And after, if we survive." His smile was sad, beautiful. "I've learned not to think too far ahead. Immortality teaches you that the future is uncertain, no matter how much time you have." He paused. "But if we survive, if Corvin is dealt with, I would very much like to know what else is possible between us." Her heart stuttered. "Seelan, I know." He withdrew his hand, the moment breaking. "You're human. You'll age and die while I remain unchanged. The same story that ended in tragedy with Isolde." His voice roughened. "I swore I'd never do that again. Never put myself or another person through that pain." "Then don't." He looked at her sharply. "I mean it." Alara's voice was steady. "If that's what you're afraid of, there's an answer. You could turn me, make me what you are." "No," the word was immediate, vehement. "Elara, you don't know what you're asking. I'm asking for a choice. The same choice Isolde never got." She grabbed his hand. "I've read the histories, Seelan. I know. Turning requires consent, requires the human to drink vampire blood willingly. I know it's not a gift you give lightly. It's not a gift at all. It's a curse." His eyes were anguished. "You would watch everyone you love die. Your sisters, your family, they'd grow old and pass while you remained frozen at 26. You'd feel the hunger every moment of every night. You'd lose the sunlight, the warmth of day, the simple joy of tasting human food. You'd become other, separate from the world you knew. But I'd have time." Her voice was fierce. "Time to learn everything you could teach me. Time to truly fight at your side, not as a human liability, but as an equal. Time to," she faltered, "time to see where this goes between us. You'd resent me eventually, hate me for taking your humanity, or I'd thank you for giving me a purpose, for making me strong enough to matter." She leaned closer. "I'm not Isolde, Seelan. I'm not asking you to turn me right now, tonight. I'm asking you to consider it. To not close the door on that possibility because you're afraid of history repeating itself." He was silent for a long time, his eyes searching her face. Through the bond, she felt his turmoil, longing warring with fear, hope fighting against centuries of guilt. "If you're still alive when this war ends," he said finally. His voice, barely a whisper, "if you still want this after seeing what eternity truly means, I'll consider it. But Elara, immortality is forever. There's no going back once the change is complete." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "And I wouldn't ask lightly. But I also won't let fear of the future stop me from fighting for what I want." A knock on the carriage door interrupted them. Moira's voice filtered through. "My lord, the household is assembled to receive you." Seelan rose, helping Elara to her feet. But before he opened the door, he pulled her close, not to feed, not for anything but the simple human comfort of an embrace. His arms wrapped around her, cool and strong. And through the bond she felt the depth of what he couldn't say aloud. That he was falling for her despite every vow he'd made to remain distant. That he was terrified of losing her the way he'd lost Isolde. That, for the first time in 500 years, he was beginning to hope. "Whatever happens," he murmured against her hair, "I will defend you with everything I am." "I know." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Because we defend each other. That's what partners do." His smile was genuine, warm, transforming his severe features into something almost mortal. "Partners," he repeated, as if testing the word. "I like that." They descended from the carriage together, hand in hand, to face whatever came next. The household staff had assembled in the main hall, their faces anxious but hopeful. Moira stepped forward, relief evident in her expression. "Welcome home, my lord. We heard the council ruled in your favor." "They did," Seelan's voice carried through the hall. "House Nightborn stands vindicated. But the threat isn't over. Lord Corvin made it clear he intends to continue this war. So we prepare. We fortify our defenses. We train every person in this household to fight if necessary." His gaze swept over them all, human and vampire alike. "We stand together, or we fall divided." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Clara stepped forward, her young face determined. "What do you need us to do, my lord?" "Everything," Seelan said simply. "And trust that I will never stop fighting to keep you safe." As the household dispersed to their duties, Elara stood beside Seelan and felt the weight of what was coming. War, blood, loss, but also possibility, partnership, perhaps even love. Through the bond, she felt Seelan's hand find hers again, squeezing gently. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 10. Blood and Shoisith attack came on the night of the new moon. When darkness was absolute and the wards were weakest, Alar woke to the sound of shattering glass and Seelan's voice in her mind, not words, but pure emotion transmitted through the bond. "Danger, move now." She rolled from bed, grabbing the silver blade she now kept beneath her pillow, just as her door exploded inward. A bloodhound lunged through the splinters, all twisted limbs and needle teeth. She met it with Marcus's training, dropping low and driving her blade up through its throat. It dissolved into black ichor, and she was already moving, racing into the corridor. The manor was chaos. Fire bloomed in the western wing, real fire, hungry and spreading, forcing the human staff toward the central hall. Bloodhounds poured through breached windows and shattered doors. And somewhere in the darkness, she felt Seelan fighting. His presence through the bond a beacon of controlled fury. She ran toward him. Clara appeared from a side passage, bleeding from a gash on her arm, dragging another servant. "The bloodhounds are everywhere," Lord Seelan said to get to the sanctum. "Go. I'll find him." Ilara pressed her blade into Clara's free hand. "If anything tries to stop you, aim for the heart." She didn't wait for an argument, just sprinted up the stairs toward the north tower, where she felt Seelan's presence burning like cold fire. The bond pulled her forward, through smoke and shadows, past bodies both bloodhound and human, until she burst into his study. Seelan stood in the center of the room, surrounded by 6 bloodhounds, his sword singing as he cut them down with surgical precision. Blood black and red splattered the walls. His eyes were silver-edged with black, the monster close to the surface, but still leashed. Then Corvin stepped through the window, casual as if arriving for tea. "Lord Nightborn, how predictable, you always protect the humans first." His blood-red eyes found Alara. "And here's the pet." "How convenient." "Alara, run," Seelan started. No, she moved to stand beside him, her training blade raised. Through the bond, she felt his protest, his terror for her safety. She pushed back with her own fierce determination. "Partners, remember?" Corvin laughed. "How touching." The monster and his mortal playing at equals. He gestured, and more bloodhounds poured through the windows. But mortality is so fragile. The bloodhounds attacked. Seelan met them with brutal efficiency, his sword a blur of silver death. Alara fought at his back, using everything Marcus and Seelan had taught her: speed over strength, precision over power. She killed 2 bloodhounds, wounded a third, her movements syncing with Seelan's as if they'd fought together for centuries. Through the bond, she felt his surprise, his pride, his growing hope that they might actually survive this. Then Corvin moved. He was faster than the bloodhounds, faster than anything she'd ever seen. One moment he was across the room, the next his hand was around her throat, lifting her off her feet. Her blade clattered from nerveless fingers. "Drop your sword, Nightborn, or I crush your windpipe." Seelan froze. Through the bond, Alara felt his absolute terror, felt the monster straining against its chains, felt 500 years of trauma threatening to break him. "Don't," she thought desperately. "Don't lose yourself. Not for me." But she saw the calculation in his silver eyes, saw the moment he made his choice. His sword fell. Good. Corvin's grip tightened. Alar's vision darkened at the edges. "Now you'll watch her die, just like a solda. You'll watch and know you failed again." Alara's hand found the small knife strapped to her thigh, the backup blade Seelan had insisted she always carry. With the last of her strength, she drove it into Corvin's eye. He screamed, dropping her. She hit the floor, gasping as Seelan moved, not with control, not with precision, But with the terrible speed and strength of a vampire lord pushed beyond his breaking point, he tore Corvin apart. There was no elegance to it, no restraint, just raw violence, ancient and absolute. When it was over, Corvin lay in pieces, his body already starting to dissolve into ash. Mercy, Corvin gasped, his one remaining eye wide. Treaty law: you cannot kill a lord without trial. You forfeited treaty protection when you attacked my house. Seelan's voice was inhuman, resonating with power. You threatened my blood bonded. You killed my people. You burned my home. He leaned close. And you invoked Isolde's name. That alone seals your death. The council will thank me for removing a treaty breaker from their concerns. Seelan raised his sword. Give my regards to whatever hell awaits you. The blade fell. Corvin crumbled to ash. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of distant flames. Seelan stood amid the carnage, his chest heaving despite not needing breath, his eyes still edged with black. Through the bond, Alara felt him teetering on the edge, the monster so close, the control so fragile. She forced herself to stand, to cross to him on trembling legs. Seelan. He didn't respond, didn't seem to hear her. Seelan, look at me. She touched his face, feeling the supernatural cold of his skin. It's over. He's gone. We're safe. His eyes focused on her slowly, and she saw the moment awareness returned, saw him catalog her injuries. The bruises forming on her throat, the blood on her clothes. You're hurt. His voice was rough, barely controlled. I'm alive. Because of you. Because we fought together. She took his hand, lacing their fingers. You didn't lose control, Seelan. You protected what matters. That's not weakness, that's strength. I almost when he grabbed you. I almost, but you didn't. She squeezed his hand. And I fought back. I wasn't helpless. We're partners, remember? Equals. Something in his expression cracked, and suddenly he was holding her, crushing her against his chest with desperate strength. She felt his shoulders shake, felt through the bond the release of centuries of guilt and fear. I thought I'd lose you, he whispered against her hair. Like I lost her. I thought history would repeat, it didn't. We changed it. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. And we'll keep changing it. Together. Moira burst into the room, smoke-stained and bleeding, but alive. My lord, the fires are contained. The bloodhounds are dead or fled. She stopped, seeing Corvin's ashes. Is it over? It's over. Seelan's voice was steadier now, the control settling back into place. House Corvin falls with its lord. Their territories revert to council control. He looked at Alara. We're safe. Finally. The weeks that followed were a blur of reconstruction and politics. The council confirmed Corvin's death, redistributed his territories among the remaining houses, and formally recognized House Nightborn's right to self-defense. The blood farms were dismantled, their captives freed, and through it all, Alara stood at Seelan's side not as a servant or a possession, but as his partner. The bond between them deepened, strengthened, until they could speak without words, fight as one unit, exist in a partnership that transcended the boundaries of human and vampire. 2 months after Corvin's death, Seelan found Alara in the garden at sunset, watching the last rays of light paint the sky gold and crimson. You're thinking about it, he said, settling beside her on the bench. Immortality. She nodded. Is the offer still open? Always? But Alara, once I turn you, there's no going back. You'll be vampire, bound to night, to blood, to an existence that may span millennia. His silver eyes searched hers. Are you certain? She thought about her old life, the village that had discarded her, the family that had sold her, the future she'd thought was close to her. Then she thought about the past months fighting at Seelan's side, learning vampire lore, discovering strengths she'd never known she possessed. I'm certain. She took his hand. I don't want to age while you remain unchanged. I don't want to spend a human lifetime and then leave you alone again. I want, her voice caught. I want forever with you. However long that is. His smile was brilliant, transforming his features. Then forever you shall have. He raised her wrist to his lips, kissing the faded scars where he'd fed from her. But there's something you should know first. What? The physician was wrong. You're not barren, you never were. And while vampire human children are rare, his eyes held hers. They're not impossible. If you want that family, children, you should have them before the turning. After, you'll be frozen in this moment forever. Hope, fierce and unexpected, bloomed in her chest. You mean, I mean, if you want children, we have time. A few years to live, to love, to build the family you thought you'd lost. His hand came up to cup her face. And then, when you're ready, I'll turn you. We'll have eternity together. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That's Seelen. That's everything. You're everything. He kissed her then, soft and reverent, a promise sealed in touch. My partner, my equal. Soon, my wife, if you'll have me, yes. The word was joy and certainty, and the beginning of forever. Yes, to all of it, as the sun set completely and stars emerged overhead. Elara leaned against Seelen's shoulder and felt the future unfold before them, bright with possibility, rich with love. Eternal as the night itself, she had come to him broken, discarded. Believing herself worthless, he had seen her strength, her fire, her unbreakable core. Together, they had survived war, faced monsters both external and internal, and built something that transcended the boundaries of human and vampire, mortal and immortal. Together, they would face eternity, and that was more than enough. The end. Epilogue note: 3 years later, Elara gave birth to a daughter with Seelen's silver eyes and her own fierce spirit. They named her Isolde, honoring the woman whose tragedy had paved the way for their triumph. When the child was 5 and understood what her parents were, Elara drank from Seelen's wrist and became what he was: immortal, powerful, eternally bound to the man she loved. House Nightborn stood stronger than ever, a beacon of hope that vampires and humans could coexist, not as predator and prey, but as partners. And in the centuries that followed, the vampire who had spent 500 years alone and the human woman who had been called barren built a legacy that would reshape the Night Court forever. Their love became legend, their partnership became law, and their choice to see strength in each other when the world saw only weakness became the foundation of a new age.